one of the things that we need to know in the very first about a young person is what are their interests, and then what are their skills. When we're working with an older and more experienced adult and for doing a career change, or if they're coming back into the workforce, we start with skills, because skills are the building blocks of any tasks and that you do on the job, and we want to make sure we know what your favorite skills are. But what I found is if you start with that and young adults or teens, it's too bland. So we start with interests, and then though, because the interest is going to say you want to be in this field, the skills you have that are transferable are going to help you find the position that you're going to do in that field. So we need to know both of those things. And finally, we need to know something about their personal traits, what you might call personality traits. In this field, they are called self-management skills. And again, we start looking, and there is, most young people, if they have no work experience, the skills they are selling are those self-management skills. I can be there on time. I can follow instructions. I can ask questions when I'm confused and I don't know what to do, instead of just throwing the switch and ruining $80,000 worth of equipment. So for young people, those personality traits are really important. And for the person who's going to be the rock star, or who is going to be, then we look to that and we say, okay, nobody has to go about this the same way, but now you've talked to 6 or 7 people, where do you see your self-management skills? You know, how much risk, how much rejection can you take? Because there are a lot of people who do want to do those things, but their ability at this point in time to take rejection wouldn't be as much as if they were a little older, a little more mature.
Which raises, thank you, that was great. In terms of students, Carol raised the issue of how old or how mature they are. You work with a lot of students. Would you agree with Carol's comments in terms of differentiating age group A, age group B, and age group C in terms of the risk?
Well, certainly that's one way to differentiate. I do see mostly teenagers and young adults, but teenagers who are leaving home. I talked before about making that transition from adolescence to young adulthood. And a lot of kids that I would see in my practice especially don't even know what their interests are. And that sometimes you have to go way back into issues about being afraid of being autonomous, being afraid of moving on. What's it going to mean if I'm having to take care of myself? Do I have the life skills to even go to college, let alone get a job, be in a career? And so sometimes you really have to go back, way back, to get to the point of what are their resistance and what is their hesitation that's making them not able to even envision what that transition might be.
But how can we replicate? Let's assume you do a perfect job at that with all of the people who come to see you, and we know you do, and you should also hold up your book too, so hello. But how can we replicate that for society? Assuming that everybody can't come to see you next Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, do you have any suggestions about how we can replicate that for society?
Well, as we've both been talking about, information, knowledge is power, so that being able to normalize to some extent the need for young people having information. What are their options? What are the ways that you go about making decisions about going on to higher education, getting a job, career planning? It doesn't just fall by luck into people's laps. They have to do some research. They have to talk to people. That's part of growing up, is taking some responsibility. And I think if we as a culture, but all the way from school systems to individual families, and that's why we talked about needing to take a family to move on to college, they're that support system that can be there to help. It can be friends, peers, mentors, coaches, but also parents who play a very important role in at least pointing young people in the direction of how to get information, helping them obtain information, knowing what they can anticipate, because what we're both talking about as well is knowing ahead of time what you're going to need in order to, whether it's be an actress or go to Harvard and everything in between, is knowing what it's going to be like. What does it take? What is the necessary credentialing that has to happen? And I think for a lot of people, an issue we haven't mentioned is the issue of loss. That when you move from one thing to another, it can be very exciting and energizing, but it also can be very debilitating for some people because it's a loss of security, a loss of the known, a sense of I know where I am, and boy, it sounds good to go to college, or it sounds good to move to New York to go work in business or go to Hollywood, that's a little scary because I'm not sure I'm ready to make those kinds of transitions and changes which
Right.
involve loss.
Absolutely.
You know, and especially this particular generation, they're kind of a pod, you know, they have these social networks, and when you go on to college, very few of your friends are going to the same place. And so the loss for them is this tight-knit group back home. And so that is really a very important feature, is covering the loss. And then also, I don't know if you stumble across it, but I do, young people who are setting themselves up to fail for some reason. Because, you know, intentionally, they won't take in information, they won't check with anybody, I'm just going to do it myself, and you just know what's going to happen to them. They're going to be calling you up 3 months from now saying, I'm back home, what do I do?
But what can the parents do? What can the families of the people, of the kids that we're talking about, what can they do? What advice would you both give for, you know, let's assume that there really is going to be the loss, this is going to be a tough transition. What should the parents be doing in preparation for this loss?
Well, one of the most important things we do as human beings is talk. And so it's important to just talk with your kids, for kids to talk with their parents, their relatives, their siblings, and use them both as a support to be able to say, yes, I did it too, or I know this is difficult, or it's safe and okay to talk about your financial fears about taking out loans or not being able to make it economically. What is the reality? What can we maybe afford to help you with? What we can, so that they're emotionally supportive and kind of encouraging young people who tend not to talk to other people, especially these days face to face. It's a whole lot easier to talk, you know, clicking away when you're really not having to deal with things. So I think it is a responsibility of parents and family members and peers to really discuss what's happening and what's going to happen, and not draw this curtain as if nothing past today is going to occur, so I don't have to look there. It's kind of the Wizard of Oz. I don't have to see what's behind there.
What's behind the curtain? Yeah.
Well, and Toto or the Scarecrow or whichever character you would like to be in the Wizard of Oz, how would you answer that?
That there are sites online where young people who are getting ready to go to college go, and they talk about their fears, and this is good. But for parents, find someone who your new little hatchling respects, who has done what they are setting off to do. And maybe it's within the family. It could be a cousin. It could be an older sibling. But sometimes sibling rivalry is a little, you know, hey, squirt, you think you're going to follow in my footsteps, you know. So you don't want to do that one. But you want to find someone who is positive, who your young person looks up to, who has kind of gone that route. And sometimes the colleges themselves are very helpful in matching someone from your hometown or your same department, or someone who plays sports or whatever. But find someone who this person will take information in from, and see if you can get them together either online or in person.
Well, and do you think the universities can do, well, let me rephrase, do you think the universities are doing a relatively good job of kind of matching students with mentors, or do you think there's something that universities can do to improve that?
Given the 60% dropout rate from university, I would just have to say no, they're not doing. Now, I know that there are lots of programs that are just gearing up and getting on retention. This is the big deal.
Okay.
But judging from that rate of 60%, more could be done.
Now, specifically, what do you think could be done?
Well, what we know, and we don't need any more research on this, we know that young people who go on to higher education, who have a plan, not only do they actually finish high school in greater numbers, they go on to and finish college in greater numbers. So in my area of work, what we're trying to get everybody to know is that not only do you need decent grades to succeed in this world, you need a plan. And this can't be a plan that just comes out of your head. You need to show this to other people, your mentor, your department chair, whoever has experience and someone who's worked, and you need this plan well vetted. This needs to be a strategic plan that will guide your transition.
Well, let's place this transition for the student who goes to university. Things don't work out, and now they're 25 years old and they're back at home. And there's been a lot of talk, as you well know, in the country about that group. Do you have any thoughts about what do you do then?
Well, here's where you get into some really interesting family dynamics, because what's the family doing? And a lot of times when you have that 25-year-old person, maybe they came back home at 23 and they're still there. So it's going to take a can opener and a very high velocity jet to get that kid out. But what I find is, and sometimes parents are my clients, we have to lay the ground rules of the expectations. And this is so hard for many parents to do, because instead of seeing it as helping their young person, oh, I'm doing something terrible for them. And I usually tell them, you know, Llewellyn the Great not only toppled the king, he consolidated the Welsh clans and became king at 15. So,
You know, I've never heard that.
That's true.
yes. So I think we need to raise the bar a little bit on what our expectations are. But here's what I've also learned from my research. If that 25-year-old did no career planning back here at 15, 16 when they're really interested in it, that's how you get a 25-year-old at home.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that the reason for kids dropping out of university may be related to issues that are going on once they hit campus, but they certainly or probably could have been spotted well before then. And a lot of times families are in denial about the appropriateness of careers or colleges, or should the child even be going to college? Are they ready to go to college? Should they be going to some other kind of training? Do they need to first mature and grow up before they can really benefit from going to university? And so I think the 60% number to some extent reflects a lot of irrationality. Just like I want to become governor right away, it may be I'm going to go to college and go through in 4 years, graduate, and then get a great job. And that's unrealistic often. And parents also, and family and coaches and counselors and people around, grandparents too, need to be able to say, you know, let's really think about what's the best fit for you. What are your strengths? What are the things that are going to work to your advantage, and what are the things that may keep you from being successful right now?
Well, Andrea, I think that's a very good point, and we're going to have to leave it at that. But let's leave this as a positive thing, where I think we would all agree that what we want to try to do is encourage students to find the schools that are the right fit for them. We want to encourage students and young adults to find the careers that are the right fits for them. And we want to, I think what we want to do, and I think the work that both of you are doing, you know, it's very important work, because what we're essentially doing is we're helping to make sure that students are down paths that are going to help them lead fulfilling lives. So I want to thank you both for this enlightening discussion. And if you would like additional information about What Color Is Your Parachute for Teens, or College Admissions Together, It Takes a Family, please visit Amazon.com or ParachuteForTeens.com or AndreaLymanPhD.com. Thank you for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. Please join me again for another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm Stephen Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.